Hello there, community. A very warm welcome from the Darwin Circle. Yeah, today we have Mark Kroese as a guest here in our talk. He's General Manager for Sustainability Solutions from Microsoft. And yeah, we want to talk about a big goal because Microsoft wants to be carbon negative by 2030.
That's right.
Yeah, and you also had a keynote on this topic as well.
Yes.
My first question is, what is the biggest challenge on this journey?
Oh, there are many challenges. If you think about being carbon negative, for us we had about little less than about 20 million metric tons. We need to get that to zero, which is a combination of reduction and removal. So we need to reduce our emissions by 55% by 2030. So we're working across the entire company from Azure to Microsoft 365, Dynamics, Xbox, real estate, all of those groups, and working on reduction targets. And then an equally big challenge is carbon removal. We don't do offsets, we do durable carbon removal. So by 2030, we're going to need to purchase about 7 million metric tons of carbon removal in the carbon removal markets. Mm-hmm. Last year, we purchased 1.5 million metric tons of carbon removal, which was about half of the available supply. So we have a supply problem, and that is great news for startups.
Yeah, we also want to talk about it as well, but we first also want to know which technology has the most potential for this carbon removal.
There are a number of technologies for carbon removal. The most popular that people talk about is direct air capture. So Climeworks, for example, in Zurich, Switzerland, we are an investor in Climeworks. That is washing carbon out of the air and then pushing it under the ground. But we're also very excited about soil sequestration and biochar and a number of other nature-based solutions that are really accelerating. A big part of removing carbon from the atmosphere is turning dirt and degraded farmland into rich soil that can absorb carbon. That is an IoT sensor. You have to measure all that stuff. So we're working across both nature-based and engineered solutions.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned as well that you are working together with startups and also scale-ups in this field. So maybe you can tell us more about this collaboration for the climate. So how you work with the startups together?
Yes, so Microsoft has two venture funds. One is called M12, which is a general fund, and one that I oversee is called the Climate Innovation Fund. That is a $1 billion venture-style fund. Deployed that capital, we're deploying it in 4 years, not 7 like a typical venture fund. So we're moving quickly. And we are now halfway through the deployment cycle of $1 billion. So we've put about $570 million into the market. And we have seen about over 1,000 proposals from various startups and various companies. We've made 34 investments to date.
34, okay.
34.
Yeah. 34, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a reason a lot of them just don't fit our investment thesis. Unlike a lot of venture funds, we're not focused on outsized returns. We don't want to lose the money, maybe we'll get single digit returns, but our key metric for success is climate impact. Mm-hmm. So how much removal or reduction of CO2 and greenhouse gases are we influencing through the fund's investments? We also think about climate equity, making sure that we are making investments like in sub-Saharan Africa with microgrids and that kind of thing, taking care of the world's most vulnerable. And climate underfunded markets, we try to be where other people might be too risk averse on. Mm-hmm. And then we also invest in ways that align with our product strategy. Mm-hmm. So we call that product alignment and operational alignment. So we have a four-pronged thesis. We measure every investment along those lines.
You have a specific focus on technologies if you are invested in startups?
Well, we are probably most invested in carbon reduction and removal technologies, but we've also invested in waste. For example, we have a company in our portfolio, Reaply, which is a circular economy company. We're also invested in various water concerns. We are building this thing called the planetary computer, so we're investing in ecosystems and ecosystem data sets. But right now, the biggest challenge for us is to be carbon negative by 2030. So we're invested in removal and reduction technologies.
How much is the ticket size for startups, and in which startups you are invested in which phase?
That's a great question. So important to understand that we are not an early stage seed investor. We do not lead rounds. We have a relatively small team. So we are a Series A and beyond investor. We don't take more than 20% of a round. So we're not leading rounds. We're not the majority holder in rounds. We let the price get set by other folks. But even in that, we've done some rounds. We've made some investments that are as small as $2 or $3 million, as large as $50 million. So it sort of depends.
Okay, this the ticket sizes you mentioned. You are already invested in startups in Europe?
Yes, we have. Now you're going to press me on which ones. I have to. We're in Climeworks.
Climeworks,
So
Zurich,
in Zurich, that's the main project finance that we're involved in. And then we actually have a number of things that I can't talk about yet that are coming from Europe that we're evaluating. So Europe is really a hotbed of innovation.
So how does the deal flow look like also from European startups?
Plenty of deal flow. Yeah, there's a lot of deal flow, but there is also, I will say, a lot of capital. You know, you think as a company like Microsoft, you would be in sort of a position of always making a choice, but we are finding increasingly that we also have to compete to get into rounds because there is so much capital. We have $1 billion. That sounds like a lot of money, but there is probably $1 trillion chasing tech startups. So I think the sustainable technologies space right now is so hot, and it is such a great time to be an entrepreneur in the space. There's a lot of capital available, and there are going to be companies the size of Microsoft born from this era.
Are you also looking for co-investments with VCs who focus on climate tech solutions?
We have co-invested with a number of VCs. We have co-invested with Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energy organization. So we do a lot of. We've co-invested with Amazon.
Okay.
And we just did we just did a deal with a cross-laminated timber company that is in Washington State. And we co-invested with Amazon. So while Microsoft and Amazon may compete vigorously in other areas, we're quite collaborative with the folks in their fund.
I also have to ask you, because you're here now for a whole week, you're invited for the Darwin Circle, but maybe you already have also contact with startup founders from Austria already?
I did talk with a gal who said that I should get involved, and she said there's a conference in October, if I'm not mistaken. So I'd love to know more about that. It sounds like it's a little bit more on the angel side of things. So maybe we can have a relationship there where there's like a feeder to our fund.
You're here also on the Darwin Circle, so what are your learnings? Maybe you also have done some networking with some participants and also speakers here on the conference.
Yeah, much of the conference has focus has changed a little bit because of the situation in Ukraine. So I've learned a lot about how Europe thinks about the energy transition in light of the recent events. That has been really eye-opening, and it feels like there's a lot of conviction within the European Union about that. And then it's just been great to meet all of the people here, so it's really been quite an enjoyable experience.
Definitely. If you now mentioned the energy transition here in Europe, it's definitely a big thing at the moment, also security issues. If you compare this energy transition in Europe to the States, is there a difference? You perceive any differences?
Well, Europe is certainly leading the way. I would say in the whole world in sustainability, the policy level in Europe is the most rigorous. The United States is waking up and not far behind, so that's encouraging. But the renewable energy projects here are exciting. We have a lot of data centers here, like some of our premier data center. We have one in the Netherlands. So there's a lot to learn from Europe, and that's why I like to come here, because it does feel like if you think about technology and policy and markets all working in unison, that is happening here in a big way.
Definitely. And I've heard it's your first time in Vienna. Personal question, you like it?
I love Vienna.
Okay.
I have wanted to come to Vienna for a long time, so I jumped at the chance to come here. It's a beautiful city. It's clean. It's safe. It's gorgeous. It's got history. It's on the river. I mean, what's not to like?
Definitely, I agree on that. Mark, thank you very much that you have joined us here in the talk on the Darwin Circle conference. Thank you very much and enjoy your time here in Vienna and many learnings also in the conference.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.